let's just focus in on the suspect in what the FBI are treating as an attempt to shoot Donald Trump. He's been named as Ryan Routh, and he has apparently spent time campaigning to support Ukraine in its war with Russia. And investigators are thought to be considering that as a possible motive for his actions. So we can speak to Michael Botsurkiev, a senior fellow at the Washington, D.C.-based Atlantic Council think tank. And Michael, you previously served as a spokesperson for the Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine in Europe's Organisation for Security and Cooperation, which monitors elections. Just talk us through, because that's significant. What do we know about Ryan Routh's activity in Ukraine?
Sure. Well, a lot of what we know has been reported by other media outlets, so we have to be careful what we say. But connecting the dots together, I mean, the suspect sounds like a self-styled mercenary who is way over his head. Some might even call him a crackpot. I mean, this is a guy who was talking about buying off corrupt officials, forging passports, getting colleagues who fought in Afghanistan to come to Ukraine to fight there, and using a U.S. Military transport plane. And it clearly sounds like this is someone who should be nowhere near the battlefront, U.S. provided weapons, that sort of thing. But he was very, very active on social media. We know that. He had a lot of rhetoric about supporting Ukraine. And, Kasia, I think it's got to be said, it would probably do the Kiev government, it would probably be appropriate for them at this point to disavow the violence that this chap spews out. It's pretty harsh stuff.
It's an interesting point. Have we heard actually from Kiev so far?
No, we haven't. But I think the fear in Kyiv and among the diaspora community for sure will be that this will only harden the views of the right wing of the Trump base, because a lot of them are not in support of the war in Ukraine. I've spoken to some of them. They view the government in Kyiv as corrupt, for instance. So I think there will be worry around the kind of after effects of this and how it's going to figure in the U.S. election and longer-term support for Ukraine.
Well, that is interesting. And as reaction comes up right now, we even know the UK Prime Minister was saying he's in Italy at the moment, but he was saying that he is deeply troubled by this apparent assassination attempt on the former president, just in terms of the reaction to the US support for Ukraine. I wonder, is that going to start playing in to the ongoing election campaign, the campaigning for what will happen in the November election?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Hollywood could have scripted this any more dramatically. This comes at exact precise time, and that's why Prime Minister Starmer is here to talk to Prime Minister Meloni to talk about giving Ukrainians more ability to strike deeper inside Russia. And for that to happen, it needs broad support in the U.S. political system, as well as among allies. I don't think it will weaken in any way support here in Europe, but it could give some politicians, right-wing politicians, pause and more cause to oppose that support. But I'll finally end it by saying, Ukraine needs these weapons very, very badly to strike deeper inside Russia at the launch pads where the missiles come day after day, including 2 days ago where I'm based in Odessa. Air defense systems can't do it alone. They need the ability to strike deeper inside Russia.
And yet we saw over the past few days when Sir Keir Starmer was meeting President Biden, an outward support for that kind of permission in order for Kyiv to do that. It wasn't granted. So I just wonder, now we're seeing this attempted assassination, given his sympathies of the apparent suspect, his sympathies for Ukraine, how that will possibly reflect upon Donald Trump's thinking going forward, should he be successful in winning the election?
Yeah, well, even if this didn't happen, I think it's become clear over the past few days, especially statements by the vice presidential pick of Trump, J.D. Vance, that the Trump campaign is putting forth a plan that sounds exactly as if it were written out of the Kremlin, and that includes allowing Russia to hold on to the territories it's already seized. It's calling for a demilitarized zone that would be enforced by peacekeepers, which Russia would love because it'd probably be able to manipulate it. And thirdly, and very significantly, it calls for Ukraine not going into NATO and other allied institutions. So I think what Prime Minister Starmer and allies are trying to do here in Europe, and then hopefully the US will follow, is to future-proof support for Ukraine ahead of a possible Trump presidency. Hopefully, I mean, the clock is ticking fast, obviously, but hopefully that'll happen soon before the election happens.
Let's speak now to Daniel Lippman, who is White House and Washington reporter at Politico. Daniel, it doesn't quite have the emotional heft of the first assassination attempt this time round. Donald Trump was safe straight away and quickly moved away from the golf course. But nonetheless, you really get a feeling that people are very shocked here in the US over what has happened. How do you think it's going to change the campaign?